still a handsome. My brothers were all handsome boys anyway, and they're good-looking kids, you know. Keep them all. But like I say, going back to the Putnam Homestead, it was an experience that you couldn't even explain it, because we were so lucky and so fortunate that Put would take us in. And again, he was easygoing, you know. He would just, you know, we could have been swinging from the ceiling, and probably did sometimes. 8 kids, you know, you never knew what we were going to do. But it was, like I say, an experience that we were very fortunate, and I couldn't go back and change a minute of it. And I know there's many kids in town, well, we're not kids anymore, Nancy, that could tell you the same stories. It was open house. And I thank you for inviting us here tonight just to talk about it. It was an experience that all the money in the world couldn't change into, couldn't buy it. Thank you.
And they didn't tell you that my mother was a widow at age 32 with 8 children. And she did a great job. But I'm sorry, you can't hear me, Frank?
Good.
Yeah. And she did such a great job with all of us. But I was only there for 2 years because I moved in at 16 and I got married at 18. So I didn't have the times that they did. But I did go up on weekends, and we had a lot of, like Tina said, a lot of card games, and we had a great time. And my mother was just a great lady, and was wonderful to everybody. He was a great, great man. And in fact, I live in Andover now, and that's where he died, across the street from the house that I live in. And I felt so bad, you know, for all those years. Everybody said all the things about the Putnam and our family. And just that it was a happy house, and we did have a great time for the people. That's all I can say.
How long did you live there?
Well, I only lived there for 2 years, but I think my mother later married Al Croswell. And she had 2 more children by now, so we ended up having 10 of them. So what year do you think it was that Mama moved out?
I don't know, it was really right after, before she gave birth to Tommy.
Tommy, yeah, but she was, we moved in, I think, 1945. About 1945, like I say, I moved out in 1947. I really don't remember, but they all went to school. And I do have a daughter that lives on Hayward Street today that has 2 children that went to graduate from high school here in North Reading. And
did you graduate?
Myself, no, I quit school to take care of my mother. Yeah, my father died when we lived in Charlestown, and someone had to take care of the kids.
You would have had to go to Reading anyway.
No, at that time, my father died when we lived in Charlestown. And so I was going to school there when I went to school.
Well, what I meant was you would have had to go to Reading High School.
Oh, yes, right, yeah, right, you're right, yeah.
At that time.
Right, that time. Because there was no school, yeah.
Right.
Mary Lou was the only one, the baby of the family, was the only one that did go to North Reading High School, and the first year it had graduation. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really, I've had a lot of fun talking to the whole Post family, trying to, this was your suggestion.
Yeah, well, they kept us entertained.
Yeah.
At our open house at Christmas. Well, all the stories. It was wonderful.
Yeah, and I enjoyed talking to the different members of the family.
Right.
As you know, Billy couldn't be one of us.
I think there were, what, 5 or 6 of you there at Christmas? The open house?
Well, actually, Billy's granddaughter was there with her mother.
Right. There was quite a few posts. Yes, it was fun.
Yeah, that's
Well,
what
this particular picture
was painted way before I was born by my father. And, well, my father and his father, George Fancy and Susan Fancy, they had the house where 221 Elm Street is today. And just briefly, this house isn't there anymore, but it's where Pleasant Street goes in, off Elm Street, Route 62. And I'll get into that a little later. But he painted it from his upstairs bedroom window. That's looking west. And this is Route 62, or Elm Street, running between there. And if you notice, this was a way back, before they had power lines. And I don't know, you'd have to look at it close. This was a two-family house that Paul Schultz owned. And he planted carrots, and he had hay way back. If you look at Pleasant Street, it's quite smooth. But there's one outhouse, and there's a two-family house. There's another one hidden behind there, because I know it was there. You don't see any, but I just want to talk first on Ralph Littlefield lived over in this house. It's red now, and there was a barn there. But there's a bridge going over the Ipswich River, goes over to where Linda Smith's property, if you provide it. And this house is fairly close to the road. This one was very close to the road on that far end. But I want to talk about Ralph Littlefield a little bit, because when I was a young fella, my mother's house was here. This is east of that property, on this side of the road. They also owned across the street, but the land dropped off. They had apple trees there, but the land dropped off, and it was only a couple feet above the river. If you ride by there today, you'll see where it goes down. But along the side of her property, I used to go sledding there with my friend Robert Richardson, who used to live on one of those apartments there at the time. And if you didn't turn at the bottom, close to Ralph Littlefield's land, you'd go about 5 feet on his property. Well, he must have spent all day looking with binoculars. I can hear him to this day. Get off my land. Believe me. And he wasn't only doing that with me, and we'd hardly get on it. And he'd be out there hollering. But he also did it with fishermen. In those days, people would walk along the river and fish. Now, Harold Smith, who you know, Edie, very well, he's another one that got kicked off. But
He didn't like Littlefield at all.
it was a little odd, I think. But anyhow, actually, later on, Harold Smith and I did Ralph Littlefield favors. I did some plumbing for him, and Ralph used to take his lawnmower over and mow his lawn. But anyhow, I just want to talk about him. In those days, the parade, North Reading's parade, was to walk from the center, go right down Elm Street to the cemetery at Riverside Drive. And it was great. It was great. But a few days before Memorial Day, you'd see Ralph or his brother Frank. They'd be sitting on the lawn and wonder what he was doing. Never bought a lawnmower. Cut the grass with scissors. And, I said he was a little odd. But anyhow, I just wanted to mention that. Ralph, his brother, Frank, and his sister Grace. I don't think either one of them ever married. I might be wrong. But anyhow, that's that story on that side. On this side, Paul Schultz he was a farmer,
Missed that.
and he had 4 sons. But Paul had the big White House down by the Thompson Club. He farmed down there. That was his home. Gordon worked a lot for him. Pleasant Street, this was a barn. He had a 2-family house that he rented there, the yellow one, and a barn. But in back, he planted quite a few acres of carrots. And beyond that was a hayfield. Well, his sons were, the oldest one was Edward, then there was Chet, or Chester, and then there was Cornell, and then Bullock. And they were very smart. They were all older than me. Cornell and Chet were pilots. Maybe more, maybe others were too, but they were pretty smart fellows. And Paul Schultz also owned up where Anthony and Peter Road at the time, with Jeff and Barbara Neely on that property. So he was pretty busy. But anyhow, I happened to be, this is my mother's property here, I happened to be out in the yard one fall day, and in the afternoon of my mother's property, and I saw this Piper Cub come over, and at the time, there were power lines on the south side, because it was in the 40s when this happened, sometime in the 40s. I don't remember the exact date. And this Piper Cub made a pass right over that, and then down, but he circled around, and he come around again. This wasn't, the bomber that went down Mooney Hill wasn't the only plane that went down in North Reading.